You ever have a moment in life when you suddenly realize, oh, this wasn't an accident, this was a setup? Yeah, I learned that the hard way. The day someone dropped a kid into my arms and vanished off the face of the earth, as if they had never existed to begin with. I'm not exaggerating, not even a little. One minute I thought I was doing a simple favor for acquaintances. I barely knew people I had only met twice. The next minute, I was standing alone in my apartment with a 3-year-old boy who had no birth certificate, no medical records, no last name, and apparently no parents who wanted him back. And the part that still messes with my head? Nobody was looking for him. Nobody. I didn't sign up for any of this. Nobody wakes up and says, "Hey, maybe today I'll accidentally become a father." But life doesn't ask for permission. It just dumps things in your lap and waits to see what you'll do. So if you've ever wondered how a regular guy ends up legally adopting a child he didn't know existed 48 hours before, well, buckle up. Because every choice I made, every stupid, terrified, instinctive choice, dragged me deeper and deeper into a situation that could have landed me in handcuffs, in court, or in a mental breakdown. And somehow, here I am, telling the story. Because the kid sleeping in the room down the hall, he calls me Dad now. But let me start from the beginning, from the moment everything seemed normal. Even though nothing about this story was ever normal. So picture this. It's a random Thursday night. I'm at home, eating leftover pizza straight out of the box because I'm classy like that. And I get a text from a couple I barely knew. Let's call them Mark and Elena. I had met them a few months earlier through a mutual acquaintance at a barbecue. They seemed nice, quiet, a little too quiet, but I didn't think anything of it. The text said they were in some kind of urgent situation and needed someone to watch their son for just a few hours. Not overnight, not a weekend, just a few hours. I almost said no. I mean, who leaves their kid with someone they barely know? It felt off. But then I thought, maybe they had an emergency. Maybe their babysitter canceled. Maybe they had nobody else. And honestly, I didn't want to be a jerk. So I said yes. They arrived 20 minutes later. They didn't come inside. That should have been the first red flag. They were in a rush, both talking at me at the same time, handing me a small backpack like they were passing a baton in a relay race. Inside was one juice box, a half-empty pack of wipes, and a pair of pajamas. That was it. The kid, his name was supposedly Sam, didn't cry. He didn't cling to them. He didn't even look confused. He just stood there, holding a stuffed polar bear with one ear missing, staring at me with these big brown eyes. I asked what time they'd be back. They said soon. I asked if he had allergies. They said no. I asked if everything was okay. They said, "We'll explain later." And then they were gone. In such a hurry, you'd think the car was on fire. I closed the door, stood there with this tiny stranger next to me, and thought, okay, this is weird, but fine. I can deal with this. 3 hours passed, then 4, then 6. My texts went from, "Hey, everything okay?" to, "You coming back soon?" to, "Is this a joke?" No response. Around midnight, I called. The number was disconnected. Not no signal. Not voicemail. Disconnected. My stomach dropped so fast I swear I heard it hit the floor. The kid was quietly sitting on my couch, flipping through pages of a picture book, like everything was normal. I didn't want to scare him, so I kept my panic internal, like my heart was sprinting laps while my face was trying to look calm. I tried calling the mutual acquaintance who introduced us. He said he hadn't heard from them in months. He also said, and this is when my blood went cold, that he never knew they had a kid. Great. Fantastic. Exactly what you want to hear at 1 a.m. when you're babysitting a human. Question mark. At this point, I had two options. Call the police and explain I was left with a child whose parents had evaporated. Or wait until morning and hope this was some awful misunderstanding. I chose wrong. I waited. Around 6 a.m., the kid wakes up. He walks into the kitchen, dragging his little polar bear, looks up at me, and says, "Breakfast?" Not, "Where's mommy?" Not, "Where's daddy?" Just, "Breakfast?" That messed me up more than anything. I made him scrambled eggs and toast. He ate quietly, too quietly. Kids that age should be loud, messy, curious. He acted like someone had taught him to take up as little space as possible. I asked simple things like, "Do you know your last name?" He shrugged. "Do you know where your mom and dad work?" He shook his head. "Do you know your birthday?" Another shrug. It wasn't that he refused to answer, he genuinely didn't seem to know. And that's when I realized this was way bigger than some irresponsible parents running late. I finally called the police. And if you're imagining they rushed over with a squad of investigators ready to unravel the mystery, no. They treated me like I might be the problem. I get it. A random guy with a kid that isn't his? No paperwork? No explanation? That's exactly the kind of situation cops are trained to be suspicious of. They asked me questions for hours. Where did I meet the parents? Why did they trust me? Did I know anything about their lives? Did I have any proof they gave me the child willingly? I didn't. Nothing. Not a single text survived because their phone number was dead. The police took him for the night. They didn't handcuff me, but they looked like they wanted to. I went home to an empty, silent apartment, feeling like I'd done something horribly wrong, even though all I did was say yes to babysitting. The next day, a social worker called. She asked me the same questions the police did, except she asked them twice, and slower, like she was trying to hear the truth underneath the truth. Finally, she said, "We can't identify him." "What do you mean, you can't identify him?" I thought maybe she meant they were still running names. "No," she said. "I mean, there are no records, no birth certificate, no medical history. He doesn't exist in any system." That sentence alone could give someone a heart attack. "He has to exist," I said like an idiot. "He's a person." "We know," she replied. "But legally, we can't find anyone tied to him." I asked what would happen to him. She said, "He'll remain in temporary care until we locate family." But here's the thing. There was no family. Not legally. Not on paper. Not in any database of any state. Days passed. Then weeks. I couldn't get him out of my head. I kept thinking about how small he looked sitting at that table, stirring scrambled eggs with a tiny fork. How he never asked about his parents. How he looked scared of doing the wrong thing, even though he never misbehaved. So I visited him. The foster home he was placed in was fine. Not terrible. Not amazing. Just fine. But the moment he saw me, he ran up and hugged my leg like he'd been waiting for me. I didn't expect that. The social worker didn't expect that. Honestly, nobody expected anything about this story to go the way it did. I visited again and again. Every time I walked in, his face lit up like someone had turned on a lamp inside him. The social worker pulled me aside one day and said, "He doesn't do that with anyone else." I said, "I'm not trying to replace his parents." And she said something that stuck with me. Someone already did. It took me a minute to understand. His parents didn't leave him with me by accident. They left him with me because they chose me. I was the plan. And the worst part? The more the state looked, the more they uncovered a trail of things that made my stomach knot. Unpaid debts. Under different names. Rented rooms they never returned to. Burner phones. No official documents. And travel patterns that made no sense. I didn't know if they were criminals, or scared, or victims themselves. But one thing was clear. They were never coming back for him. One night, after another long visit, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for about 20 straight minutes. Because I knew what I was about to do next would change my entire life forever. I called the social worker and said, "What do I have to do to take care of him myself?" Silence. Then she said, "Are you asking about foster placement or legal guardianship?" I said, "Whatever lets me keep him safe." Starting the process was like volunteering to climb a mountain barefoot. They wanted my work records, my income history, my fingerprints, my medical exams, my criminal background checks, my references, my rental agreements, everything short of a DNA sample. They inspected my home so thoroughly, I expected them to check behind the wallpaper. And the interviews? Imagine sitting in a room with two people staring at you like hawks while asking questions such as, How do you discipline a child? What would you do if he hit another kid? Do you understand children with trauma? What will you do if his parents return in 5 years and want him back? Are you prepared financially to raise a child alone? And my honest answer to the last one? Absolutely not. But I'd figure it out. The paperwork alone almost broke me. Everything took months. Every form led to another form. Every approval led to another waiting period. Meanwhile, I kept visiting him. We built routines. He started speaking more, started laughing, started asking questions, started trusting the world again, one small inch at a time. And somewhere in that process, slowly, quietly, without any dramatic movie moment, I realized I loved him. And I think part of him knew that before I did. 9 months after the night they dropped him off, the state finally said the words that still feel unreal. You are now his legal guardian. The signed it with Mang, not adoptive father yet, that required even more steps. But I was responsible for him. I was his person. The first night he slept in my home, his home, he pushed his tiny mattress against the wall, placed his stuffed polar bear next to him, and whispered, "Are you staying?" I said, "I'm not going anywhere." He fell asleep instantly. But the part of the story that I haven't told you yet, the part that kept me awake for months, was what the social worker asked me during the guardianship signing meeting. Do you want him to know the truth about his parents someday? I looked at Sam, sitting on the floor building a tiny tower out of wooden blocks, humming to himself. Safe and happy and unbelievably small. And I said, no. I don't ever want him to know they abandoned him. He deserves better than that story. She nodded, didn't judge me, didn't question me, just wrote it down. To this day, I'm the only one who knows the full story. He only knows that I'm Dad. He doesn't remember anything before that night. And honestly, I'm grateful. Some memories aren't worth keeping. I changed his last name when the adoption finalized 2 years later. We celebrated with ice cream and a trip to the park. He got chocolate all over his face, and I didn't care. He could have gotten it on the car roof. I wouldn't have cared. Because he was my son, not by blood, not by accident, but because someone left him with me, and disappearing was the best thing they ever did for him. I still don't know who they were. I don't know why they chose me. I don't know what they were running from. And maybe someday he'll ask questions I don't want to answer. But until then, I'm just going to be the father he needed, the father he deserved long before either of us knew it.